Hello and welcome back to Talking Europe. Iran has long been one of the world's most prolific executioners, but it seems to have taken the death penalty to a new level this year, with dozens of people executed in the last few weeks, according to the Norway-based NGO Iran Human Rights. The United Nations has denounced what it calls state-sanctioned killing, while campaigners say that capital punishment has been weaponized to intimidate those who've been protesting since the death of Mahsa Amini. She died in custody last September after allegedly violating the Islamic Republic's dress code for women. Now, the EU's response has included sanctions and a strongly worded resolution in the European Parliament. My guests will be discussing what else the EU should do. They are both members of the Parliament's Committee on Relations with Iran. Evin Inşir is a Swedish socialist and Democrat. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Also with me, Marco Campomenosi is with Italy's right-wing League Party and a member of the Identity and Democracy Group here in the European Parliament. Welcome to you too.
Thank you very much.
So, a question to both of you. What do you think is the effectiveness of the EU's sanctions on Iran at the moment? Perhaps Evin Inşir first.
I think that we need to see on how the effectiveness will look like, but the decisions that have been taken are very, very important and very, very strong, and of course are affecting those people who have committed these crimes, their lives, but it's yet to be seen.
What do you think?
Well, I think that it was thanks to the European Parliament that the European Commission has been more and more engaged time by time regarding the issue, because, of course, since September, many people have understood how the situation in Iran is dramatic, but some of us were already working on this question before, and at the beginning the European Commission did not help us. So I think that the resolutions we have voted the last times, especially the last one, are a good point, and I think that the European Commission could also have the possibility to increase the sanctions.
So a kind of awakening, while so much attention has been focused on Ukraine, obviously, but Iran is now much higher on the agenda, isn't it, in the EU?
Apart that, the issue is also linked because Iran is maybe one of the most supportive allies of Russia. We know very well the issue of armaments sent to Russia to support their aggression to Ukraine. So everything is linked, also this question. But honestly, I'm defending the rights of citizens in Iran, even when not many persons in this parliament were so open to consider the possibility of a regime change. What is good at the moment is that we have a sensation that a regime change is possible. For this reason, we have to work also with the oppositions, with all the different words of the opposition's parties against the regime.
I do want to explore that question of regime change or not, but first, just if we could go in slightly more detail, Evin Inşir, on the sanctions, because one hears reports of, for example, children of the Revolutionary Guard still having access to Europe, and the previous sanctions haven't really done that much to change the government's conduct. Would you agree that it hasn't actually done that much to deter the government?
First and foremost, I would like to stress that what we are doing right now, it's not only changing some part of the behavior of the regime, it is contributing to change of this heinous regime. And those steps that have been taken right now, until now, they're good, but they're not enough. So one of the things that I was pushing quite a lot with, I had the honor to be the lead negotiator on the last resolution, since I was one of the initiators to it, but was what you just mentioned, that these sanctions also need to include the families of these people who are committing crimes within Iran, because these families are actually accessing those rights where the Iranian people within Iran are being denied. So, and some of their financial resources, they're also getting out through channelizing it through their children and other people of their families. So they need to be included.
There's also an argument that says without a lot of pressure on the private sector, the conduct of the Iranian government won't change, because as long as there are international companies willing to help the oil and gas sector, which is under sanctions, it's going to be business as usual. So is Europe doing anything on that, do you think?
Well, I remember last year having debates in this parliament against some of the sanctions imposed by the United States, especially some French and also in some cases some Italian enterprises were against these sanctions because they wanted to continue to have business. But I think that now the situation is different. Everyone has understood that we have to insist in order to create this. And also the people in Iran is asking for this, because this is also important. I think that since the moment we have seen that a person as Raisi was elected as president, we had to understand it, to see that the process would have been problematic. For example, what we are doing, some of the countries of the Sunni, for example, areas are doing with Israel, with the United States, with the Abraham Accords is, I think, very positive. There are good new relationships. But what Iran is doing internally, but also outside its borders, for example, trying to have an influence in Iraq, for example, how it was difficult to create a government in Iraq after elections because Iran is supporting militias, parties which are close to them. This is something for which I think we have misunderstood or maybe underestimated the risk. And I think that we could do a lot, even from Europe, which is maybe in some cases a bit far, but all these people is asking for us to intervene.
Just on the question of the nuclear deal to both of you, because obviously the EU was a key actor in that whole episode, if you will, and is that now completely off the table?
I mean, in practice, it is already frozen. So there are no negotiations in practice on the JCPOA. I myself personally in favor of suspending it, because the reality shows that it shows, and we need to take all measures possible to end this oppression that exists within Iran right now. And the silence that has been occurring for decades after decades and years after years has shown to not work.
So you'd be in favor of formally suspending it?
Personally, I would be very much in favor of suspending it.
What about you, Marco?
I agree, of course. I was against this agreement since the beginning because even when Mrs. Mogherini was dealing for this agreement, I had the sensation that it was something for which we could not trust in the Iranian regime. I think that some of the governments in Europe, and maybe Mr. Borrell as well, are still defending the agreement because maybe they would like to offer it to the regime in order to obtain something a bit more in the direction of democracy. But honestly, I think it would not work. It's a case for which I think we cannot trust anymore in Tehran, in the actual regime, and we cannot sit at the same table to negotiate on something so delicate as a nuclear agreement.
So, I mean, you both favor quite a hard line, it sounds to me. In that case, is it not very difficult to ask for getting dual nationals out of prisons in Iranian jails? That's to say, people who hold an Iranian passport and also a passport from a European country.
I wouldn't say that this is a hard line, because for over 40 years there has been quite a lot of silence, a lot of at least try on making this regime to take a peaceful path, a democratic path, a path which respects human rights, and they have shown to fail over and over and over again. This is a regime who doesn't see respect for international rights and human rights as their way forward. So it isn't a harsh line, but I think that we need to do everything we can do to put pressure to end this violence, and that also includes to end this execution that are taking place of the Iranian people and the dual citizens also. So I think this is the way forward.
I think we have to be strict. I don't think it's only something regarding the conditions in prisons and regarding the persons which are fighting, because these persons in prisons, these persons fighting against the regime are asking us to be more strict against them. So I think we have also also to consider what Iran is doing outside, even outside.
I'm just suggesting that more criticism doesn't necessarily lead the Iranian government to be in a mood to have a compromise on, for example, a Belgian-Iranian national.
Yeah, but silence hasn't either worked. We have seen, for example, in the case of Ahmed Reza Jalali, a dual citizen, also from Sweden, the country I also come from. He hasn't been released. So I think that we need to now try other measures that we have tried previously, and because of what have shown to not really work during the decade. But I also want to actually stress that what we, for example, adopted at the last plenary session in the parliament, the resolution we adopted, it's not only 705 MEPs voting on policies, it is actually the echoes of the people of Iran that we see in the resolution that we took on when we went into the negotiations on the resolution and the policies we adopted and are demanding.
A response to their expectations.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Evan. We've run out of time now, but thanks to both of my guests, Evan Inchir and Marco Campobanosi. And that's all for this edition of Talking Europe. I'll be back very soon with another episode from the European Parliament here.